So welcome. I want to give a shout out and a very warm thank you to North Star Water Media Society, who puts on this show. I think this is the 17th show. And so they have these great events once a month. They have local artists and international artists come through and give watercolor demos. It's a great society, and you can see the huge amount of work through here, and I'm really honored to be here.
Tell us your name.
Yeah, and my name is James Nutt. I'm an architect during the day. All right, how about this?
Yeah.
Is that better? Okay.
Oh, perfect.
I don't sound as much like God without all the booming bass.
Right.
So, like I said, my name is James Nutt. I'm an architect. I teach art. I paint every single day. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I've always painted and drawn my entire life. That's what I got in trouble for in high school. I graduated high school with a C average because I was drawing class all the time. And I graduated architecture school cum laude because I was drawing all the time. And I have got to go back and tell a few teachers, show like, look, I get paid for this now. And I don't know if they enjoyed it as much as I did, but so that was great. So I teach at White Bear Center for the Arts, and I've got a class coming up in Minnetonka Center for the Arts. And but the big deal, if you come out of this with anything, is to just draw and paint for any reason whatsoever. You're going to see in this, I'm going to do 3 paintings. I'm going to make it difficult enough that if it doesn't pull through, I've got an excuse. But just draw for any reason. Just kind of go for it and learn. So you draw for any reason, because you're bored, because the meeting's long, because you want to get better, because you want to get better straight lines, because you want to remember. If you draw something, you will remember it forever. So I do a lot of travel sketching, and but just draw for any reason except to try to make a beautiful picture. Because if you try to make a beautiful picture, that voice in your shoulder will just absolutely wreck you, right? And that second grade teacher that yelled at you for getting outside the lines and everything, she's probably not even teaching anymore. So she's not going to show up and yell at you. So do what you want. My job as an architect, I really love my job. And it's getting 50 people going along the same line, making sure everything's straight and right and coordinated, and everybody has their input on everything. But in my art is the one place that helps with that, because I get to make all the decisions. I get to decide what's a mistake, what's not a mistake. And over the years, I have a studio in Northeast Minneapolis, a Solar Arts building, and it's always open the first Thursday of the month. And watching people go through and see your work for that long and listening to what they say, I don't put a name tag on it because I want to hear what people say. What they see in a drawing, you don't see in a drawing. What you think is a mistake, they don't even have any clue that it's a mistake. There's stuff that I thought was half finished. At Art World, I had 3 pieces sold that I just had hung up because I forgot to take down. They're half finished, and they love them. So you don't know what other people are going to do. So don't worry about what they're thinking, because they're thinking something different than you anyway. And if you show somebody something, they say it's terrible, well, you don't show that person anything anymore. They've lost that right. So to do this daily package, I just bought this bag. My other one I've had repaired like 6 times, so I finally bought a new bag. One of the tricks is to always carry your stuff with you. You really only need a pen, a brush, and a paint kit. But I carry all this stuff because I experiment quite a bit. And I'm going to pass a couple things around as I'm talking about. I carry these smaller kits. One of the tricks is to draw small. You'll see some of these are walking things through a zoo, waiting for a friend to show up for dinner. So a lot of these are just little quick kind of sketches. And I tend to draw on more than one thing at a time, because while one thing is drying, you can work on something else. This is my current sketchbook, and I did this demo in a coffee shop in about 10 minutes to kind of practice. I'm going to do a larger version of this. So, but it doesn't always have to be pristine. I was in North Shore this weekend with family. So just little quick stuff like this. So what I'm going to pass around is, find what I did with it. There's a really great group of Metro Sketchers, and there's also Urban Sketchers. About 30 or 40 people meet, and we always do since we're at the state fairgrounds, we do a day at the state fair, and you go around and you sketch things at the state fair, and then you meet up at 3 or 4 and you look at each other's paint kits and that kind of stuff. It's really fun. So I'm going to pass this around. So these are about 6 or 7 years worth of state fair sketch, and you'll notice this Twisted Sister sausage is in here a lot. It's my first food, and it's my first warm-up sketch. And then one year in here, One year in here, I was so hungry I ate it first, so I had to draw the stick. So anyway, so I'll pass this around.
You said Metro Sketchers, you mentioned a second one.
Yeah, Metro Sketchers, and then there's Urban Sketchers. And actually, they're all the same people. It's kind of a welcoming little group. And then, so my paint kits that I carry around are, I think I've got one in my pocket. So when I'm walking and traveling, it's not the tools, right? This is a kid's paint kit that you pop the junk out. I saw Ross Stendhal do this at one point, and you pop the kid's junk out, you squeeze your good stuff in. So between that, and if people seen these water pens, they're a little plastic pen that has water in the handle. That is all you need. I can walk and watercolor sketch with this.
Are you going to be demoing with those water pens by any chance?
I'm not. I could do one. They're not that different, except you don't have quite as much control of how much water's in the brush. But and this is the secret to doing your everyday thing. Because what's great, if you're painting in a restaurant or something, when you're done and your person shows up, you put this away. You're not putting cobalt and cadmium into the restaurant's glasses and stuff. This stuff's nasty. And also, you can paint with coffee. I have a little series at work called Yesterday's Coffee, so I leave my coffee cup overnight and just do a quick little scribble. That's kind of fun. The other thing is when you're out travel sketching, find things, I've read something that said, found things that have a relationship and let them talk. So, this is a salt and pepper shaker drawn in the Arkansas version of a Waffle House called Huddle House. At about 2 o'clock in the morning, come back from a family reunion. And so I have a tendency to do a pretty rigorous sketch, or at least an underlay, and then really be loose with the color. So this was the demo that I did last year. So you can at least expect this one to be at least as good as this one. The other that I did was an urban sketch of y'all. So this is my then medium and then small. So for this pencil, I'm going to do kind of a diagonal piece. So since I've done this, the page isn't blank anymore, right? And I'm going to find some of the important parts of the page. I'm going to break it into 3. So in general, my pencil is going to be from here to here. Everybody can see this okay? It'll get, when I get to the pen part, I'm not worrying over much about getting perspective perfect or getting the lines perfect, but I have also drawn this so many times. One way, if you're worried about being too tight, is to hold your pencil from the edge. It kind of lets you focus on what you need to focus on. And I tend to draw my pencils with a hand sharpened edge because I think it's more interesting looking. But also, some of these pencils are expensive, right? And a pencil sharpener wastes a lot of pencil. So if you hand sharpen them, they last forever. You can get the tip that you want, and it's an excuse to carry a pocket knife. I just got the question, is this an H or an HB? This is a 2B, and that's simply because that's what I grabbed out of my bag, but I tend to use things in the B range, and I tend to not erase a lot. If you look at my work out here, a lot of times you can see the construction lines under, but I think that's because I'm an architect and I love process. I love being able to see process. If I was trying to do something more careful, more photorealistic, I might get rid of that, but I love the storytelling aspect of it. So that's both the narrative that you bring and then also how the thing is done. So let me just get a quick sketch down here. And I don't always sketch first. And then I'm going to do a border. Borders are really fun. Even though I've got a border drawn here, that's a hard lesson. That's a 8x10 sheet. If you don't take anything else away, if you paint a lot, lay down an easily frame size first. I have caused myself so much heartache and money having to get things custom framed. If you can get something that's that you can just buy something off the shelf, you're better for anybody that buys it and what you do. So I'm going to do a border, but I love to have things pop out of a border.
So what did you say, buy a what first? You want to buy a frame? Is that how you got your first lines?
Well, yeah, so before I even came here,
Yeah.
I measured out my page to be an 8x10.
Right.
So many times I just grab a piece of paper that I like and I draw, and then it comes out really good, and then I have to get it custom framed.
Oh, gotcha.
Or somebody, you give it to somebody and they buy a custom frame and they cover up half of your stuff. It's sort of your fault because you didn't think all the way through it. So anyway, so this is my general sketch over the top of that. And then I'm going to go back over and ink it. And one of the tricks to inking things, at least in my method, is that you're not tracing over the pencil. You're drawing it a second time. You might change your mind, but if you draw something twice, it's always going to be better, right? And then for this, just for energetic line, this is a pen and a brush kind of combined. They're so it's a nylon brush, and you can get the ink cartridge that you put in. And once I get rid of the ink that it came with, I have a syringe and I put the inks that I want to put in. So I carry 3 of these. I carry one with waterproof ink, which is what this is. I carry one that's not waterproof, and if it gets water to it, it goes everywhere and does cool stuff. But it's not cool if you don't want to do that, right? And usually one that's colored. But this is kind of a fun pen because I can get very, very thin lines all the way to super thick lines, and I've got to wake this one up. So with the same brush, I can get all of that stuff. And it's worked at the coffee shop, so it better work now. But if it doesn't, I have 15 more pens in that bag over there. So here we go.
Can you, yeah.
And if it doesn't work, I'll change course. That's part of this. If something doesn't work and the drawing is not, okay, here's what's going to happen. I have an idea what this is going to look like. About 80% through the project, it's not going to look like what I thought it looked like. That's when everybody wads it up and throws it away, right? At a certain point, you have to accept what's on the page in front of you. And so you'll probably see that happen. But so what I'm going to do, that's actually not being very happy. So let's see about this one. Get something a little bit more dependable.
So this time you want permanent.
Yep, this time I'm picking intentionally permanent. Sometimes I will use it a non-permanent and just be happy with the bleeding and everything. There's probably some in that State Fair sketchbook that's going through. You can see that those, sometimes I pick it or I don't have the right pen. You just accept it. You don't say, well, I can't draw today because this pen's not acting. You dance with it. You don't fight with it. So let me just do a quick sketch here. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but if you draw like you're having fun or you're confident, it'll look like it. If you draw like you're feeling nervous about it, if I draw like, oh God, I'm not sure, perspective can be perfect, and that doesn't look as good as if the perspective is off and I'm feeling confident about it. That's a higher quality sketch than that. So your art will tell on you. So just have fun with it. And so I'm just kind of loosely, and I'm actually making some different decisions than I did with the brush or with the pencil at first. And you can always come back in and add more lines. You can't always go back in and take out lines. And here's a trick to draw straight lines. If you use your pinky on one side and drag it up and down, so using your hand as a guide, that's a nice trick. Like that. And I'm going to see if I can get this guy to work again. I think the difference is when I did my test at the coffee shop, I was on smooth paper, and I think it's this texture paper that's not being real happy with me. And this whole thing's an experiment, right? So this may or may not work, but we're gonna see. I'm gonna put the ink down, and maybe that'll get the whole thing started.
So when you ask for a combination pen and...
Yeah, these are called, I think Pentel makes them. I know that a lot of manga, the Japanese artists, they use these quite a bit. It's just not as happy on the textured paper.
Say it again. What did you name it?
I wish I remember. Manga is you can see the Japanese Pokemon type drawings. That's manga. They use these quite a bit.
But what's the pen called?
A Pentel brush pen, but there might be a more technical name. I apologize. I bought this like 7 years ago, so
Okay.
So anyway, so with this, that's not going to work for me, but it doesn't matter. All right, I'm going to go ahead and sign it because we're working wet and wet and I won't have time to wait for it to dry in the demo. Okay, so from there, the fun part happens. The color. And so these are my paint kits. I'm working on condensing it down into one, but basically it's just these metal tins that you can buy. And I actually took a license plate and tin snipped the license plate and rubber cement the pans and half pans on top of this. So my time is going well. And so usually I just have these with me at the table, but I brought this, which is half of another palette, just so I can mix and people can see from the outside there. So now the fun part, because the way that I paint at least, I make half the decisions and watercolor makes the other half the decisions. They call it letting the pigments hold their counsel, because this is like, when you're watercoloring, just think of it as colored mud, right? And this is a white shag carpet. Some of it's got more shag, some of it's more smooth. If you have more water than paint, paint equals mud, it acts different. If you have more paint, water, you know, so it just kind of acts different that way. So it's constantly moving. If this paper's wet, that mud is moving through things. So, and then that abstract process real quick is a lot of times at the end of the day I've made all the decisions I can, and so I'll just make a move and then I'll respond to that move, make a couple of rules, and a lot of times it's with the extra stuff that's in the can, so I'm going to kind of do these simultaneously, this one more intuitively. So so first I'm going to use kind of create a background color for this just to start. So half the time the challenge is just to start, right? So I'm going to get the whole page wet, but I'm going to do my best to leave a dry spot between the pencil and the color. That paper's called dead, and the live won't cross over from the dead. If it does, the color kind of bleeds out, and at least in my method, that's okay, especially because it's too late at that point. I'm going to get this a little bit wet too. I'm just going to throw some stuff in here because you'll see this paint moves the whole time. And one of the watercolor demos that I was able to make was Ted Nuttall. He does these amazing portraits, and he used a pretty limited palette like I do. He used one brush for everything. So sort of how he painted was reminiscent of what I'm doing, but he kind of had a rule where he puts all the colors a little bit everywhere, so I have started to do that. So even though it might seem a little bit nonsensical, I will kind of adopted some of that, and really some surprising things happen, and it's not as drastic as you think it's going to be kind of at the end. And since I've got this blue, this is I'm going to say it wrong, Playful blue, so I'm just going to make a move at this point. And we'll see what happens. Like one of these, well, maybe it's been passed around, but you know, sometimes it kind of comes out kind of random. They come out, especially when they're your rules to make up, right? You can do what you want. You got a little piece of trash in there. You know, I'm just going to leave that. That's just part of the thing.
It's a gift.
It's a gift. It's a gift you didn't ask for. And then in that same vein, I'm going to take some of this. I think this color is New Gamboge. It's one I just put in. I don't know a lot about it yet, so but I guess we're going to find out. So all these little blotches, they won't look nearly as drastic. And you notice I'm spilling some stuff out. It's kind of fun just to do. Takes the pressure off of being perfect, right? Maybe pick a red here. I don't even know what this color is. That's too pink. No, let's go for it. Part of it's kind of watching what happens. Here, so that's really pink. So what I'm probably going to do is right off the bat break that rule I just told you about and use a bit of a warmer red.
What was the first red you put down?
That's what I don't remember.
Okay.
One of the things, this is really dirty, and when you're painting this limited palette like this, I sketch on sight a lot, and it's really fun if you're just using a 3 to, like, a lot of times you paint like the jazz clubs or a place that has neon light, or let's say dark restaurants or bars or whatever. If you paint with just 3 colors, you kind of know your palette, but when you get in the daylight, you painted a lot bolder than you would have allowed yourself if you had control of everything, so that's kind of fun. All right, so this is way darker than I was thinking. So like I said, at a certain point, the drawing that you start to do is not what you had in your head in the beginning, and that's okay. All right, so now for my brown, I'm going to kind of mix these 3 until I get somewhere. So if you get in the same family, you're sort of guaranteed that it's going to work. And then also, I don't carry a black in my palette because I love to mix them. I found out that this Platho blue, which you wouldn't think, that and this bright orange color, that makes a beautiful black. It takes a little practice to mix it, and then if you put a little Platho green to it, it really gets black. So from there, you can see it's just a lot more interesting black than if we had done something else. So I'm just kind of intuitively making marks here, and also, I guess in this case, testing my color too. It feels like that needs a little balance up here. And I guess I didn't do anything with yellow on that, so let me just play with that for a second.
So that's going to be an abstract painting also,
I hope.
maybe?
In theory.
What 3 colors did you use for the black?
Okay, that was a Platho blue. I think this is called, these are all Daniel Smith, but a Scarlet Pyrrole, and a little bit, just a tiny bit of Platho green. So anyway, so for this tip, and since this is live and this is live, this is going to bleed up into, and I'm perfectly aware of that. And since I didn't quite get the lines that I wanted here, I might ramp that up a little bit. Actually, if I do that right now, this is still wet, that'll bleed all in, so I don't want to do that. So let's see what happens there. Then a little bit, start to add a little bit of shadow in. And then we'll see what happens. This is so wet, I don't exactly know what's going to happen, but that's part of the fun part. Let's see, I'm doing the time. So you're already halfway through this thing. It's crazy. So you can see that this is already starting to kind of breathe out. And we're starting to get interesting stuff like that happens. And I'm going to take a little bit of this blue. Since we decided the sun was coming from this way. I'm going to do this. I'm just put a few little things here. So you can see just kind of moving around, and I'm not like focusing on getting this perfect and this perfect. I'm kind of working through everything because art is never done, right? It's due. I could work on this for a year and a half, or I could finish the whole thing here. Let's see, I'm going to. I gotta make that part. Let's just play with this a little bit more. So I talked about this orange, so let's just do a big. Let's just see what happens there, and then let's. So if So I do water, so there's more water here, there's less water here, so in theory that's going to kind of zoom out. And then it's kind of fun just to do this too. It's never as drastic as you think, but it tends to always work. So while that's cooking for a second, let's see, I feel like this needs something here. So with this type of abstract, I call it watching yourself think, because this stuff comes up. Oh, this is kind of fun. So, because if any one of you had these same set of rules and these same colors, your drawings would look completely and totally different, right? And if you're fastidious, you probably have a lot more small lines. If you're somebody that likes to wash over the details, you might have, you know, larger things like that. So, so that I might try to do like that that urban sketch. I might do something there. So once again, so this is kind of an example of a start. You know, sometimes, most of the time I'll do a pencil drawing and then an ink, which is not a tracing. So that's about there. The back wall is about as tall as that is, so I know that the ceiling is going to stop there. It's going to stop there. And so I'm trying to get the big things in first, which would be the big shapes of these windows. You can't see it because you're behind you. And then a couple pipes, and then perspective. And then for people, you can draw anything for people. Don't get hung up on people. Your brain wants to make people out of things so badly. I mean, the front of cars look like people, right? You could draw, I can be as sloppy as I want. I can do a circle.
Can you put it down so it's in the mirror?
Yeah. I can do a circle and a rectangle. And you read that as a person, right? So don't worry about people, but if you have a group of people, one of the tricks is to get the relationships right? We're talking about telling stories. And drips are always fun too. You know, so having people's heads leaning in together, talking, that's really all you need for a table and people talking. You know, if it's two people standing and their heads are back and leaning back, that's not necessarily, you know, a conversation that they're both enjoying. So you're trying to get the relationships there. So I have lost my pencil. There we go. So all I'm trying to say here is there's a crowd of people watching this big bald guy. And then so here's my table with some brushes and some things. So from there, that's enough to get all of my stuff on the page, because it'd be easy to run out of page, right? So I'm going to give this guy another shot. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use a pen that I know, or at least I believe, is not waterproof. I don't think it is. We'll find out. But I'm intending that this might bleed. Another thing here, so. And also, if you're painting in public, if you're really good and you can recognize who you're drawing, you get in trouble sometimes. But if it doesn't even look like them, then you're usually okay if you get caught. I usually just explain to people what you're doing. So pick something that's a little less yellow than what I did last year, but a little bit yellow. The break back there. So I'm just going to kind of lay this down. So let this cook while we're talking about the rest of it. And I'll figure out what I'm going to. Oh, this might be fun. Even though the sky's not always blue, it's a good symbol of blue. And there's a lot more windows in this. So one of the ways that a lot of my technique is about taking the pressure off of art, because there's a lot of pressure to it, right? And so if you allow yourself just to go with it, you'll actually produce art instead of being afraid. And I preach a lot about, like, I don't understand why people are so afraid to draw. Just draw for yourself or whatever. But then, if my wife asked me to get on the dance floor, there's no freaking way I'm embarrassed about that. You know? Nobody cares. All right, so we'll let that cook a little bit. Actually, just to see what happens, I'm going to put a lot of water there. One of the things that confused me at first about watercolor was let's see. So there's, on both these cases, the red has more water, and so if there's more water on the red side, and I touch these two, the red is going to overflow the blue because more water is flowing in to less water because it wants to equal out, right? If I wanted the blue to win, I would give it a whole lot more water, and if I touch these two, as this settles out, the blue is going to win. So always pay attention to that. But if water's not coming off your brush, that means your paper is really wet, but your brush is really dry. Like, even though this is a super strong pigment, the brush is pretty dry, and the paper is pretty dry. And actually, if your brush is like super dry, and the page is super wet, it'll actually, so this brush is super dry now. And if I touch it in this blue, see there's a little bit of red that goes in. Water is actually sucking up into my brush because the brush is drier than the paper is. So just kind of keep that in mind. That's something I wish somebody told me in the beginning. All right, so this is dry enough to play with a little bit. And people can ask questions too as I'm finishing these up. Obviously I can talk and go with it. So with this, in general, what I'm not happy about is see how the background is coming forward and the pencil itself is kind of receding. So that's what I need to fix right now. So one way to fix that is always with a good shadow. And let's see, I'm going to use and see that big shadow that I made, how that's completely disappeared at this point? So you really don't quite know what's going to happen in the beginning. And this time I'm breaking my rule, because I want to. And I'm using indigo. It makes a great shadow, and I love it. And all that black that I was talking about with the orange, I actually have one of these pans, I pre-mix it from the tubes. So I don't have to muddy all the rest of my colors up to do that with. So I have that kind of pre-mixed. Things are always better in threes, I think. So there's kind of that. Anyway, so see already this color, how that's popped that up a little bit. And if I start to, ooh, I didn't expect that. So that's not one that I want to let go. So I'm going to pick that up. But that also reminds me that this needs a little bit more of an exciting red. So I'm kind of